basically, tell us your story. Start with how you got into swimming. Start there.
I had an older brother, Jim, who wanted to swim on a summer league swim team in Pascagoula, Mississippi. And I was probably 6 at the time. And whatever he did, I, of course, thought I could do better. So I joined the team too and had quick success.
How come you thought
That's how I got into it.
How come you thought you could do it better than Jim?
I don't know. I always had that mentality. Just very competitive. I guess very competitive. And then the next place we moved was Hawaii, so that worked out really well.
How long were you in Mississippi?
Till, gosh, I think I was third grade.
And then, so how long were you in Hawaii? After third grade to what?
4 years. So I was in Hawaii for 4 years. So I swam with Coach Sakamoto, and then I went back and I swam with him again later on as a teenager too.
So in third grade, you're probably what, like 9, 10?
Yeah.
10.
So I moved to Hawaii when I was about 9, 10. Yeah, somewhere in there.
So you swam with Coach Sakamoto from basically 10 to 14.
Yes.
Your formative years.
And then I went back and swam a summer with him when I was 15.
Okay. So he was, no wonder why you talk about him a lot, because he was your main coach.
He was amazing. And then when I was 16, I swam with Peter Daland. So I had 2 Hall of Fame coaches. So I had some good background there as a swimmer.
All right. Why don't you just describe how Coach Sakamoto influenced you then? Start with just, since he was your main coach, tell us, how he influenced you and your thoughts about him.
He took an interest in me for some reason, I don't know. And he invited me onto his team because I was swimming originally just for like a little while on the Pearl Harbor swim team, which was just down the block. And he thought that I could be national caliber. So he invited me to swim there, and he did. He took me to national records, and we traveled all around California in the summers, and I went to Far Westerns and got to swim there and win there. And I think I had a national record at Far Westerns one time. So he saw something in me, and I wanted to please him, of course. So I worked my tail off, did whatever he said.
What'd you get your national records in?
100 breast, maybe 50 breast. Yeah, 50, 100 breast.
What about the 2? No 200 breast?
No, I didn't. I didn't have a 200 breast, even though I became a 200 breaststroker.
Really?
Yes, I was better at 200 than 100. But I hated it. It's a tough event.
That's funny. It is a tough event. What is it that he did that made you want to please him? Why did you want to make Coach Sakamoto happy?
Well, first of all, he was very tough. There was nothing easy or sweet about Coach Sakamoto. You knew that he wanted you to push you to be what you could be. And I think that worked for me because I felt that's probably what I needed. I liked to work hard. And so somebody that could give me a path to do well in, that's what I did.
That's good. Any in particular, or any things that you remember about his practices that stick out in your mind? Like, oh, this is my favorite part about his practice, or this is the toughest part.
Hey, the sun's coming out. I'm putting the glasses on so I can see you.
Okay.
He always brought it down. The intervals always came down. He challenged you every day at practice. And he did a lot of on-land stroke work. He invented distance per stroke. He had a megaphone and a stick, and he would hit on that thing that was supposed to be your tempo. So he was way ahead of his time. He did interval training that he pushed you. It was very tough intervals, always descending within each interval. And he would actually move you on the deck. He would make each swimmer go to him, and he would move your arms or your body the way he wanted them to be. Like in breaststroke, he would actually move your shoulders, move your whole torso, get your arms out in front. He would actually do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So he did a lot of on land before we got into the water.
Did you do anything in the water that sticks on your mind?
Let me think. Well, like I said, he did the test sets. I think he was the inventor of test sets.
But from like a drill perspective or a technique perspective?
Oh, he did tons of drills. We did lots and lots of drills. Probably I learned most of my drills from him.
Really?
And yeah, a lot of them. And then we always started out with drills, and we always started out with kick sets. He was big into kick sets. And then, like I said, the main sets were pretty brutal and always harder and harder. So your last part of your main set was the hardest.
Yeah, it's like a forced descend.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's neat. Anything personally about him, or like, hey, this is something funny or brutal that people might not know?
He wanted my mom, your grandmother, to go to City Hall in Honolulu and change my name. He wanted me to have a Hawaiian name.
Why? Why did he want a
I don't know.
young lady to have a name?
He wanted me to have the name Lehua, which meant flower of the water.
That is a cool name.
Which was very sweet.
You think?
But then I think I was still too young then. And when I think back, I didn't swim with him till I was 14. So I left probably when I was 13. So just
their team, the Pearl Harbor team.
No. I didn't. I think I left
with him from like 9 to 13.
Yeah. So I didn't really get to develop a 200 yet. So that's probably why. And then when I went back when I was 15, of course I made trials, and I had already made trials in the 200 breast, but he got me ready for it for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And when you were skateboarding, was that in California or was that Hawaii?
I was Charleston, South Carolina.
Skateboarding in Charleston? What, on cobblestone?
Yes, I had just come from Hawaii. So, of course, they were already skateboarding. Mm-hmm. They weren't, you had to make your own, though. So you would get a piece of board and put your roller skate wheels on the board. So it was very wobbly, and being a breaststroker, I did not have a very good sense of balance. And So that's right when we left Hawaii and moved to South Carolina for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I broke my leg. Yeah. And
And
I was out for about 6 months because I broke it bad. It was a bad
that's
2
a
breaks.
that's a bad break. How long before trials was that?
Probably, well, I hadn't made trials yet. So,
So you hadn't made trials yet at that time?
no, I hadn't yet. And I broke we moved from Hawaii to South Carolina. I broke my leg, so I was out for that whole time so that was probably August. I probably didn't swim again until February.
So you went back and swam with Sakamoto and then made trials.
Nope. I actually made trials in South Carolina on a little YWCA swim team.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. But if I hadn't had the background, of course, I would have never made it. And my dad hooked up a gym in the garage, so I was doing pulley weights with my upper body. So I got pretty strong, my upper body.
That's creative.
Yeah. And then being on crutches, lugging around a hip cast for, so many months was really strengthening too, come to think of it. Not so much for my kick, but definitely for my pull, which was my weak part.
Yeah. Who helped you with your swimming? Was it your father? Was it your mother or older brother?
It was probably when we lived in Charleston. That's why I know, see, it was just a little team and not a coach that was in the Hall of Fame, or even, she was a wonderful lady,
Mm-hmm.
and was just an extra job, to help kids.
No, but
And
your family, who was a major influence?
I was going to say, so in my family, my mom went and got her lifeguarding thing so she could be my coach in the morning.
Oh, that sounds dangerous.
That wasn't too good. Or my dad would go or my dad would take me too.
Who was sweeter? Who was nicer?
Who? My mom or dad?
Yeah.
What do you think, since they're your grandparents?
Oh, I would picture grandma as a tyrant on the deck.
She was pretty tough. Now they both they just let me do the stuff I used to do with Coach Sakamoto. So I kind of did my own thing.
Oh man, my picture of them is now ruined.
So then after that, that's why I went back to California to train, like in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But I made, I don't know. I made trials that following summer after I had broken my leg.
Well, it's
So
good. It's a good bounce.
But I did a lot of training on my own. It wasn't just the little team. So I just did a lot of what Coach Sakamoto used to do, and I just did it on my own.
That makes sense. You mentioned you had a female coach in Charleston. Were there very many female influences in swimming at that time?
Yes, my first coach was also a female on the little recreation team in Pascagoula. I'd say a lot of the Y coaches were women back then.
Okay.
At least when I swam. I remember seeing some, but it was, like I said, it was always a second job, obviously, at that time, I think, for them. Like they were school teachers and then they did that, or their kids swam, so then they became involved.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking like at senior Nats or anything. No, there were no women. I'm talking at the beginning level.
Okay. And where'd you go after Charleston? Is that when you went to Southern California?
Yes, we moved because then, of course, I moved around. I was a Navy kid. My dad was transferred to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Naval Station. So I got sent. I lived away from home, and I trained with Peter Daland for a year.
Describe the difference between Peter Daland and Coach Sakamoto.
Peter was more of a college coach, I'm going to say, because I swam with the college. They swam all together on Los Angeles Athletic Club.
Mm-hmm.
But so his college kids, I think, was his focus at the time. He was a lot of yardage. That was in the era of the coaches that were trying to outdo each other with yardage. And that was the main difference between Coach Sakamoto, that was intense, but I think more careful in his selection of what you were going to do, versus Peter that bought into a lot of that yardage theory back then.
What, like 10,000 in practice?
Oh yeah, like 20,000 minimum a day. Ridiculous.
What would a set?
Well, for example, our warm-up was a 1,500 pull, 1,500 kick, 1,500 swim. That was our warm-up.
Hey, good base to start from. How much time did you have? These 3-hour practices?
Some were 3 hours, some were 2.5. And then we did weights. I mean, it was like wild. It was too much for me. That was not my best time to swim.
Did you have any time for recovery and intake, food intake, making sure you're replenishing all the energy that you're losing?
I lived with a family that we were always eating. I remember big pots, like giant pots of chili or giant pots of some casserole. So we were always eating that. I don't know. That wasn't a big focus. It was just get something in you at the time.
But if you're burning that many calories, you're probably burning insane amounts of calories. I doubt you can actually eat enough to replenish the calories that you're losing. So you're going into a negative deficit, which is dangerous. But I don't know if at that time if people dug into nutrition.
No, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't. I will say that one thing I learned from Peter that I did incorporate into my coaching was the repeats. So if he didn't like something, the whole team had to do a repeat together. So I think that's kind of where his college coaching came in. Like, you're going to do things together. This is how we're going to do it. And if you don't do it well enough, you get to do it again. So I did a lot of that as a coach. Sorry, the bugs are coming out. So that was the one thing that I took away from Peter Daland as my coach that I enjoyed. I liked.
How is he personally?
Very professional. He always had his little briefcase. He always sat up on the lifeguard stand, and he had a megaphone, and he was very precise. You always knew he was prepared. But another thing that I learned from him was I was thrown in the breaststroke lane, which they called the garbage lane. And I had a world record holder in my lane, a guy. And when we worked out at the Coliseum in the morning, it's very foggy.
Mm-hmm.
He would get out and go stay in the bathroom in a nice warm shower. And then he would come back and he would maybe do the last 200s of the 15 200 breaststrokes we were doing. And he would do the last 2 really hard. And so I learned a lot from that also. And the sprinters would just bob up and down in the fog. They wouldn't swim what they were given. But, you know, I was 15, 16. I did whatever coach said to do. So I was
adapted.
Yeah.
And you did not.
I did not. I was a young kid. I was probably one of the younger ones there because, like I said, they were all older. And so I did whatever he said to do, and I was way overtrained. So I did learn that too. That was way too much for a breaststroker that had never been trained that way before to train.
All right, well, let's jump into your coaching. How did you get into coaching? How did you evolve from swimming to coaching?
I coached a tiny bit in college, you know, just to have a job, very short term. But then, as you know, when we were in California, we lived in California. I have 4 kids, and there was a little team in our neighborhood in Valencia, Santa Clarita, and they had just a little summer league. And at the end of summer league, they had a valley-wide competition.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was there with you guys, I don't remember if you swam in that one or Andre swam first. I know Andre swam in it. And one of the coaches on Canyons Aquatics remembered me. He came up to me and said, "Did you swim at Los Angeles Athletic Club?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I was the assistant coach. I remember you. Do you want to be my assistant?" And so that's how I got into coaching. I said, "Well, I don't know. I got a baby." I think Monique was only about 18 months at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, you can just come when you want. Just come when you can." Mm-hmm. So I kind of started doing that. It was a lot of fun. You guys weren't swimming yet in a team. And
hey, Andre wasn't either.
Nope, Andre wasn't either. I just went and did that first. And then something happened. Oh, and Steve Niel, my very, very, very wonderful good friend, Steve Niel, who coached at Hart High School and had Anthony Irvin and a million other fast swimmers swim for him in high school. He coached there because this coach had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the assistant. Steve was the coach at Hart, so he was the head coach, and we coached along. You know, we coached together. We were an excellent team together, just perfectly matched. But I was the sweet one, and he was the tough one at the time. So
he was the tough one?
He was tough. I know. He's like the calmest. I know it, but it's true. Everybody loves Steve. Everybody loves Steve. And so then he got too busy between coaching and being a full-time school teacher, and he decided to not coach club.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how they asked me if I would be the head coach. And I was a little apprehensive about it at first, you know, with 4 kids, but I thought, okay, I'll do it. So when I became head coach, I think that's when you all started swimming, or part of the time.
We had to. What else were you going to do with it?
Exactly. So I think you got dragged.
Yeah.
And how you survived, I don't know. I'm sure nowadays none of that would have been allowed.
We wandered around so much without supervision.
I know. Anyway, you all survived. Yay.
Yeah, we're okay, at least physically.
Okay, very independent children.
All right. So, how did you develop your coaching strategy at Canyons? Was it all based on prior experience? So, when you get this head coaching job, now what? How do you get better?
Well, two things. I first started out thinking, I am going to explain everything to the kids, why we're doing what we're doing. I thought that they would appreciate that and work harder. And I discovered very quickly that didn't work. So it had to become, this is what you're doing because I told you to do it, and do it. So that was a switch for me, because I really was very sweet, and I had to learn how to be very tough. It was probably already in me because I had a very tough mother, but it wasn't my nature, actually.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. Are you sure you just didn't lose patience?
no, they just started walking all over. They will take advantage. You give an inch. I'm going to go inside. This is too buggy out here. You give an inch, and they took definitely the mile. So, so I had to kind of retrain how I did things. And that's when I think I looked back on what worked for me as a swimmer, and what I would utilize and what I would throw out. So that's how I started.
What were some of the effective points that helped you transition to a disciplinarian coach, or a coach that is strict with a little bit more discipline? So how did you make that transition? What'd you do?
I sat everybody down. I said, well, this is how we're going to go going forward. When I give you a set, this is what I expect. When I give you intervals, this is what I expect you to do. So I think I became clearer in what I wanted to achieve, and how that was going to benefit them. Mm-hmm. And I had to take away all the, I think I was very motivating. I'm not going to say, I became a tyrant by any means. This is what we're doing. If you don't want to do it, don't come. Mm-hmm. So we had an atmosphere of almost everybody trying to outdo each other. So I think that too, I was blessed where I had a lot of competitive kids. Once I structured it very clearly and with what I felt they needed, it all came together. Worked really well.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned that word clear, because ASCA uses that word a lot in their training. So was it an ASCA clinic that you took, or you just came to that conclusion on your own?
Oh no, I learned very quickly. Like I said, I thought I was just going to be sweet and explain, and they were going to thank me for understanding every step of the way, that I would tell them certain things, but what happened was then they just wanted to utilize that time and ask like 50 questions and then not swim, or they want to, so I just learned very quickly, like in a week, this isn't going to work.
That makes
nope, not going to work. So then that's when I just really dug deep into what worked for me to become a national record holder or go to Olympic trials. And it worked for a lot of the team. Well, now, there's two things. What's that?
I was going to say, give us specific examples of what worked for you as a coach and for your swimmers.
I went back to pretty much Coach Sakamoto's, where we're never going to do, 10,000, 15,000 yards in a workout. We're going to do between 5 and 6,500, so 5,000 to 6,500 was kind of my sweet spot. I designed it where we did all of the drills first, focused a lot on legs, and then did always take away your choice, so that I either gave you intervals that were very tight or I gave you standards that were very tough. So I took away their choice of whether they were going to work or not work. So that, and I also heard that from other coaches, but that is pretty much then what I designed. And then along the way, I had so many wonderful friends in California in the coaching realm that they would share their knowledge with me. So if I had any questions, I'd say, hey, what do you do for this? Or I'm really struggling in trying to get the kids to understand this portion of something. And they would always share their information with me. And I was eternally grateful for that. So I learned along the way. And then going to the ASCA meetings, I went every year. And it was kind of funny because when I come back, I implement all the new exciting things, and the kids would go, oh gosh, oh no, here we go. Coach comes back with all these crazy ideas. And then I implemented what worked, and then I just kind of disregarded what I thought didn't work for our group.
Any people in the past, any coaches that gave you good advice where like, this was great advice this person gave me?
Yes, definitely Dave Salo. He was all about technique and power. So I started studying only who either had a world record or won the Olympics. So I tried to see what are those swimmers doing. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of came up with what I thought was the most efficient strokes. Obviously, for most swimmers, you can't look at Phelps because he's built just differently. So you can't, what he does, some of the things he does are of course wonderful. Some of the things he does, it's because it's Phelps. He's got the physical attributes that are different than other swimmers. So what can you do with the swimmers that don't have those physical attributes and they still have a world record? So those are the kind of things that I looked at and I studied, and then I tried to implement, and that became part of the technique portion of the workouts.
Nice. Did you pick anything up from David Marsh that you can recall?
David Marsh, of course, I think was a little bit after, not the yardage, but I think the way he approached swimming was very professional. So he kind of reminded me a little bit of Coach Daland, where he was so good at figuring out what each group needed and very professional about it. So his sprint group, he didn't throw him in with his middle distance group. He had all these separate groups. And I think that was pretty revolutionary. He really focused in on what the sprinters needed. They needed extra dry land, or they needed extra weight work, or they needed extra start work, or so he's brilliant in what he came up with on how to train swimmers.
Yeah, it does sound like it's ahead of its time, or ahead of his time from a standpoint of segmenting each group and then focusing on individual athletes' needs, which sounds smart.
Mm-hmm.
So continuing back on your journey, you had some influences. Sounds like Coach Sakamoto was your main influence, but how'd you like coaching, and continue on telling us your story about your coaching experience?
I loved it. I like kids. I like teenagers. Um, that's our future. They're interesting to me. I like helping them achieve their goals, set goals, achieve goals. So I always enjoyed it. To me, it was fun. Um, it's healthy, and it keeps kids out of trouble, and it helps them become better at academics. So the whole thing about swimming to me was the perfect package. I liked that sport. I liked the kids that did it, and I think a lot of them were self-motivated. Now, I do have to say, I don't know if it was a California um, or if it's a timing, but I do see a difference. And I hear some coaches in Florida also saying that they see a difference, because I coached in California a long time ago. And then I coached here in Florida a little bit, and it was definitely a different atmosphere. And it could be because it was a YMCA. You know, you're always fighting the YMCA. They really don't want you at the YMCA I was at to be competitive. So it was tough. It was a tough situation. So I don't know if it's the kids at the Y, or most of them wanted to succeed, but it was just a little bit different atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, you've had swimmers go to, the highest levels. You had a lot of junior national swimmers, national swimmers, and then in Florida, you did have a lot of success coaching in Florida. So, what would you say is your key to success across the board, that made you successful everywhere you went?
Well, I think in Florida, it was successful at the age group level, the younger age group level, mostly because they got technique. They got technique from me. And once you have technique and just focus on shorter but intense training, it works for the younger swimmer. As they get older, yes, they needed a little more. We just didn't have, they had too many activities, too many. It's not like, it was hard to train the older kids because, maybe they're in band, or maybe they're in all these other groups. And so they would come 2 to 3 times a week. I mean, how are you going to get fast 2 to 3 times a week? It's not going to happen.
Well, you can get pretty fast if you want to get if you want to become one of the fastest swimmers in the country. Then it's not going to happen.
No, which is probably part of my issue. Was I saw it more as a let's get ready for high school swimming versus let's see how good we can get. And so I think I personally struggled with that.
Yeah. Do you think
It's hard, program based, where it's mostly like that. You'll have 1 or 2 that are very dedicated and they succeed, and that's wonderful. But across the board, it's like you don't have that mentality of the team, which I think then feeds in to the other swimmers. Like, oh, well, they're not coming. All right. It just, I did not thrive in that situation.
Do you see any solutions to that, though, where you have a swimmer that's coming 2 to 3 days a week, you see talent there, and how do you convince them, say, hey, try to maximize your abilities, do everything you can today and moving on into the future to be your best? How do you talk someone into that, or should you?
If they're in another sport, it's fine because I love cross training. As you know, you guys were all in a million sports until you're about 14, I think, maybe. Well, Andre was clearly a swimmer. You were very well-rounded. So if they're in another sport, that's fine. They can come twice a week, 3 times a week. And I applaud that and I encourage that from those swimmers. You know, if they're runners or soccer players or volleyball, whatever, I think cross training is wonderful. And then see which one you like better.
Mm-hmm.
So that I kind of encourage and can work with. It's the ones that just have a lot of other activities, which are also wonderful. I just think they should not be, there should be a separate time slot for those kids. Like, okay, these are the kids that can only come 2 to 3 times a week. We'll have a different session for them. I just didn't have that opportunity because our time at the pool was so limited.
Yeah. And you have
I don't like throwing them
too.
together. I just, huh?
You have a smaller team also.
Right. So I didn't have that opportunity or that luxury. But I think their mentality seeps into the other, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So when you want a team of excellence, like bowls, that's their whole thing, is you buy into our mentality or you don't come here.
Yeah.
And that's a luxury that they had, and they recruit, you know, from around the world. So they have swimmers that want to excel already there versus a little team, which I felt I was very blessed at Canyons. I felt I had that. Everybody in that pool wanted to do amazing things, and they did, versus, you know, at the YMCA here at Florida.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to jump to a separate topic, female coaching. You mentioned that at nationals, you didn't see any other female coaches. So do you want to describe female coaching back when you were coaching?
There were 4 head coaches that were women when I was at senior nationals coaching and at Olympic trials. So there were very few of us. Kathy Ferguson was one of them. And I can't remember the other 2, but it didn't bother me any. I always felt I was one of the guys. So I don't know how they, you'd have to talk to them how they felt, but I felt that it was, I was doing my job just as well as the guys were doing, and they were very open to sharing their ideas with me. So I never felt that it was a detriment at all. I think it was very clear why, because later on I chose not to continue to coach because it takes you away from home. And if you got 4 kids at home to raise, how are you going to go to every national meet and be gone a lot and try to continue to get your kids to school? So I could see why there were so few, because I had to make that choice at some point. Am I going to continue to do this, or am I going to stick with my own kids for a while?
That'd be an interesting question to ask one of the top level coaches that does have children, how they do it. So,
well, I think times have changed. I mean, you get a lot more help nowadays. You can't do that when you have, you're practically a volunteer. You're not getting paid much to be a top level coach. So if you're going to do it and you have a nanny or you have help, that's different. I can see how that all changes nowadays. But back then, that wasn't that prevalent, and most swim coaches didn't make much money. It was either a second job. My battery's getting low. Can you see me?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I think it's changed now, and Good. I'm glad it has. But back then, I'm just saying, I think that's why there were so few women.
Okay. Well, it looks like your battery's getting low. We got to wrap up. Anything you want to share with everyone about just swimming or your journey of swimming? Kind of final thoughts on swimming.
Well, first of all, good luck to everybody getting through this time of not even being able to train. I hope that goes away quickly. It was a wonderful, wonderful life. I enjoyed it. I'm glad that swimming was part of my life as a kid, as an adult. I need to get back into it again as soon as I can. But I think there's just so many benefits to it. And I really hope that even though I did not ever expect my own children to become coaches, I hope that they can take advantage of all the knowledge out there and be the best that they can be at coaching too.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I never expected to be a coach myself, but been fun.
So now I expect a lot out of you if you're going to do it.
I've got to get it done. No choice. It's fun. It's better than a desk job for sure. I enjoy it. All right, Mom. Thank you very much, and enjoy the day stuck at home.
Yeah, you too. I miss you.
I miss
Good
you.
luck to everybody.
Bye.
Bye.